Hello everyone, welcome to Reactify Labs. In this video, I am going to talk about another behavioral design pattern called a Memento pattern. Memento. Oh no, what happened? What? Okay, now that I have written the topic name, half the work is almost done. Yeah. So, what is Memento pattern? Memento is a behavioral design pattern that lets us save and restore the previous state of an object without revealing the details of its implementation. So basically what we are talking about is the control Z functionality, control Z or control Z, however you want to pronounce it. So what happens is, let's say we write something in Word. Okay. Um, Actually, I have a better example than control Z. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about both. So in Word, MS Word, let's say we write something. Okay, let's say we write blah 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 blah, and then at every blah or every letter we write, it internally saves that state so that when we do control Z, something gets removed, right? CTRL plus Z. It depends on what's the speed of saving. So that sometimes what happens is blah blah blah. If you do control Z, this only this gets deleted, or sometimes this whole gets deleted. Okay, it depends on that. But that's why I think this is not a good example. A better example would be again MS Word, but if you see you're writing a document, there once was a ship that, okay, and you did CTRL plus S here, so you saved it. Okay, then it got saved till here, and now you start, now later you decided to edit it. You write there once was a ship that put to sea. Okay, and then you did CTRL plus S again. Now if you see the CTRL plus S, it will save the entire thing. Okay, then you write something else like I don't know the remaining lyrics. Okay, and you again do CTRL plus S. Now it will save everything, right? Now what happens is, if you go and check the history, you will find three copies of it: history 1, history 2, history 3, right? The latest one will be here. Now if you want to undo it, or you want to delete the last history, what it will do is, it knows that it has, sorry, wait, this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. Now if you do undo at that stage, it knows that okay, if you have to undo it here, what it will do is, it will just delete this one and it will give you this one. So it has to keep track that okay, what was the last stage, or what was the last step, right? If you do a control Z again, it will remove this put to C, and only this will be remaining with you, right? See, here I am doing the undo thing. This similar thing is happening there. And to achieve that, we need something called memento pattern, because we need to remember the last thing that happened, right? Okay, so I'll explain it with you. Also, one more thing: if you just add some more thing like A, B, C, da 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 here, and you don't do control plus S, control save, you will not find it in the history because it never got saved, right? So that's it. We will keep this in mind and start to understand what this memento design pattern actually, not what, how it gets implemented. Okay, so what will we do is, we will have a class called editor. MS Word is also an editor, right? So it will have a content. This class will have a string called content. this will have a function called set content. Set content. And this will take the parameter as content, and what this will do is it will set this content, this dot content equal to content, right? So this set content is done. Now we have another thing called get content. This is not necessary, but just to set and get content, we need this, right? So we will just return content. Setters and getters are the standard functions. We are not going to spend too much time understanding them. Okay. Now we will have something called editor state, because the state is something that we are going to save. So we will have another class called editor state, correct? This editor state will also contain what? String, because state also contains the content only, right? So this will have the string content, and we will have a constructor called editor state. It will also contain content, and it will populate this dot content equal to content, and we will have a similar thing called get content here, and this will return content. That's it. This is our complete editor state. Now what our editor is going to have is it will have two more functions. One is it will have to create a state which will be of type editor state, and it will have a function called create state. What it needs to do is it just needs to create a new state, and to create a new state, what do? You just return new editor state, but not just like that, with a content. Okay, so you are just using this constructor that we have created here. And the very important functionality that we need is restore, because we need to restore the previous state. Okay, so we will have a functionality called restore, and restore from what? From the current state, or from the state where we want it, right? So it will have editor state, and it will have content equal to what? State dot get content. It will just take the content from that state and return. That's it. Okay, now that we have these things here, what we need is we have history, right? So we need to maintain a history class. So what we are going to do is, again, we will have another class called history, class history, and this history will contain the list of editor states, because these are the states that we are going to store in the history. So we will have a list of editor state, and it will have the name as states, and it will be a new array list. I am not going to initialize it. It will have a functionality called save state, and the save, it will take editor state and it will just add it in the states dot add state. So whenever we press the save button, control S, what happens is this states list gets populated with current state, right? And we have one more functionality called undo, because undo is control Z, that when we press, it will just do its thing. It will remove the last step, right? What undo does is it will check this state. If it is the first step, for if we have not saved anything, at that time we know that the states is empty. So if states dot is empty, we know that the states is empty, we have nothing to return, right? So we will just return null, and if not, then we will just return states dot remove the last one. Which is the last one? States dot size -1. This is the last one. That's it. We have our editor, we have editor state, we have history, we have all those things. So let's see how we are going to use it. So whenever we are going to make changes in our MS Word editor, so what happens is there will be an editor object, editor, editor equal to new editor. Our editor is ready. So it's just like we have opened our MS Word. Okay. Let's create our history as well. History, history equal to new history. Correct. Now what we are going to do is we are going to set the content. Means it's just acting like we are writing something there. So editor dot set content. We are going to write how are you. So when we set this content, what happens is that in the editor this content got set. Here is the editor. This content value got set. Okay. Here. Now what happens is we need to save. If we save now editor dot, do we have a save in editor? We don't have a save in editor. Where do we have save then? Okay, we have a save in history, right? So we will save in history. So this history dot save state. And how are we going to save this state? We have to save a editor state. So we will just write editor dot create state. We have the editor already, right? And when we call this create state, so it will create a new editor state here, right? This will create a new editor state, and once the new editor state is created, it will be returned. Let me see where it is. Okay, once the new editor state is created, it will be returned. Editor state will be returned here, and it will be passed to the save state. If you see the save state, it takes the editor state, and it adds that state in this editor state list. So this states gets populated with current editor state. Okay. Now similarly, if we do another time set content, editor dot set content, I'm going to expand on that. So how are you was already there, and I will write I am fine. Okay. And again I do it history dot save state, and again another state gets created. So if you see right now we have two states in our history. One is how are you. Let's say it got created at timestamp t1. Another is how are you, I am fine. This got created at timestamp t2, right? If we now press Ctrl Z, it is going to delete this one, right? This is what we want. Okay. Before that, let's try another thing. Let's say our editor is going to set content again. Okay. And it did something like it deleted these. It deleted this and it just did blah blah blah. Now what happened is we got to know that okay, this is blah blah blah. So we decided, okay, why save it? Why should I save it? Just press Ctrl Z here. So when we pressed Ctrl Z at the moment, what happened was we did Ctrl Z is basically we have to restore the editor. So we did editor dot restore history dot undo. So we have to undo the history. So when we clicked on history dot undo, you saw that states is not empty, so this will be returned. So states dot remove states dot size minus 1 will be returned. What is states dot size minus 1? At this moment, if you see, where is that? Okay, did I delete it? Okay, initially there are two states, state 1 and state 2. State 1 has how are you, state 2 has how are you, I am fine, right? So if you press history dot undo, so it will give it states dot size minus 1. It means it will give it this thing, how are you, I am fine. So history dot undo will return this object. Okay. And once this object is returned, editor.restore will be called. And what happens when editor.restore is called? Let's see here. Mm, this when editor.restore is called, this content gets populated with that value. So this content will be populated with the value this. How are you? I am fine. And so if we are going to print it, print editor dot get content, we will see this will print this thing. How are you? I am fine. It means it has successfully restored the last state. Now let's say we press Ctrl Z again. Now what happens is again history.undo will be called. States has removed this state 2 already. Okay. Now state 1 is remaining. So state 1 is going to be returned here. History.undo is going to return state 1, which is how are you, and editor.restore will be called with the content how are you. And now when we try to print again this editor.get content, it will print how are you. That's it. I hope this clears the Memento design pattern. This is not as complicated as the previous one which we had discussed. I believe it was observer design pattern. Yeah, it's straightforward. It's just a list where we have to maintain all the states. So if you think still this is hard, try to do it one time yourself and this will be clear, I assure you. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, share and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.